My name is Patience Murray. I'm a author, singer-songwriter, and survivor of the Pulse Nightclub shooting that took place on June 12th, 2016. It was just a girls' night out, and I was actually a guest on somebody else's family vacation. So that night, we decided to go out to a club in the local area of Orlando, and we were Googling 18 and up clubs and came across Pulse Nightclub. When we got there, we walked in and it was just a vibe. It was just like the most ultimate fun time. We danced, we made friends, and the entire night was just got picture perfect. A good time until the very, very end of the night, which was actually early morning. We were about to order an Uber, about to go home. And out of nowhere, you just heard gunshots. I dropped to the floor, and we kind of like scattered from each other. I actually made it outside. And when I looked up, I saw the sky. And then shortly after that, Akyra. Now, there's a lot of backstory to this, but Akyra is the cousin of the friend that I had at the time, and she was 18 years old. So she came over to me, like she made it out of the club too. So when I looked up, I saw her face. So, and I'm like, where is, Tiara? That's her cousin, but where's my friend Tiara? She's still inside. That's what Akira says. So in that moment, the decision was, let's go back inside. We saw Tiara by the bar and she was sort of squatting and like you could tell that she was like paralyzed in fear, and we went over to her. Simultaneously there's still gunshots going off, there's still people screaming, running, and just everybody reacting to what was going on in the moment. All we do was follow where everybody else was going. Like, and for the life of me, I always bring this up, especially when I'm talking to my husband, because his sister was Akira. That was his little sister. And that was before we, met. I couldn't understand like why we just didn't go back the other way, but we just followed everybody into the bathroom. There was a stall that was still open and it already had some people in there. It had to be like less than 20 people, but they were like really stuffed in there. And we were the last few to make it inside of our stall and we closed the door. It still didn't register to us until the gunman actually came in the bathroom. You heard his footsteps and he began literally just lighting up the entire bathroom with his gun. I just remember just like the energy of just hearing those gunshots and the bullets just hitting the walls, the fragments flying everywhere, just trying to find a space on the floor to just settle in and take cover. It was terrifying. Like in an instant, it completely changed from confusion to complete terror. And then that moment of just complete stillness when his gun jams. After his gun jammed, I tried to move forward a little and I felt a lot of pain. So I looked down at my leg and I saw just like blood gushing out of it. And there was like a hole, like a big hole there. And that point I realized I was shot. Um, I never felt any sort of pain like that before, but I knew something was terribly wrong with this leg. And it wasn't just a flesh wound because when I tried to move, it just felt like something had crushed it completely. Turns out when I got to the hospital, his AR-15, it completely shattered my femur. I had no idea that I had gotten shot twice because the pain of my right leg, it totally made me not even pay any attention to the fact that I had been shot, which was also a flesh wound in this one. And now in this moment, you're checking to make sure that your friends are still alive. You hear people moaning in pain, you hear people crying, and understanding now that there's also no way out. Is he going to start shooting again? Is the police ever going to find us? Is there a bomb that's going to go off? Maybe 2.5 hours in, you start to hear some sort of commotion outside the walls. All of a sudden, the gunman's energy changes as well, and he's not as still as he was before. Now he's more antsy. Now he's pacing. You could tell that something was happening, but you didn't know what exactly. But it wasn't until we heard this really loud noise that happened in another part of the club, and it just like shook everything. And in my mind, because the gunman had made a statement on the phone to someone, whoever he was talking to, saying that he had enough bombs to blow up a city block. I'm thinking he's starting to lift the bombs off. Like, this is it. Like, this is the end. Then you heard another loud noise, and all of a sudden he scurries into our stall, and now he's hovered over us. He has a handgun. And anybody in that moment, they would turn away because you don't want to get shot in the face. I just shoved my face under the stall next to me, and he just started to release more gunshots. But right before he released the final gunshot, he said, "Hey, you." And the person directly next to me, I felt their breath on my ear. I felt them get closer to me. And then he shot that person, and I just heard them scream in my ear. And that's when the police burst down the wall and exchanged gunfire with him, and they killed him. At this point, all the wall debris, the stall wall, it's all on my head. Now you have to pull all the stuff off of you and sit up and see the aftermath of everything. And in that moment, I looked across from me and I saw my friend Tiara at the time and her cousin laying over her lap and she's holding her. And I'm like, what's wrong with Akyra? What's wrong with Akyra? And then the police are shouting at us, is there any other shooters in there? And then the police came in, they picked me up, dragged me out into the car, and then met with the ambulance. In the beginning, it was really, really tough. I would be crying all the time. I would be upset. I felt like nobody understood the gravity of the terror that we had experienced. That was tough. And then people online, social media, not understanding, the gravity of it either. It was a really weird mental gymnastics of just stepping away from things that weren't that important to really focus on my actual healing, actually getting better, physically getting better, being able to learn how to walk again, being able to learn how to be among crowds again, be around people again. So that was not the easiest journey. Just kind of bringing my backstory a little bit into it. I don't know my mom. I have no idea where she is in the world. It's been like that since I was 2 years old. So I don't have mom support. My dad, he's always struggled with mental health issues, and he was there the best he could be for me during those times. And I was grateful for that, but a lot of the times I felt super isolated and alone, and I feel like I didn't really have a lot of support. So, through that journey of trying to figure out how to bounce back from something like this, it really, number one, leaning more into my spirituality, connecting more with God, praying more, just being more in tune with God and my journey with Him. That was the most important thing to develop during that time. When you go through something really, really traumatic like that, it's really hard to remember like the things that you like to do, the things that you love to do, who you really are, who you want to be in the world, because fear is always fighting that fear. And getting past that fear of even going outside, being around people, trusting your decision making again, because we made a choice to go to Pulse that night. It was a decision that we made. And that's the end result of the night. So now you have to trust that this is an isolated incident. Anytime I choose to go anywhere, this isn't going to happen. But I can trust, I can go out, I can have a good time, I can, be with friends. During that time, I was actually falling in love with my husband. In the midst of this horror and in the midst of this tragedy, something beautiful was blossoming. And that love really helped me focus on healing, focus on the positive, focus on what life could be like after tragedy, imagining a better situation. And maybe it's not romantic love, like maybe it's embracing the love of the people who are trying to be there and support you in your family or your friends, like allowing people to love on you, allowing people to help you, and not being so stuck in a state of anger, because that was a huge part of it too, kind of moving past that anger of feeling like, why did this happen to me? This shouldn't have happened to me. Why did I have to go through this? Why do I have to be healing from anything at all? Sometimes things happen that we don't understand. First, accepting that and realizing that in time, things will start to make more sense. Understanding that that's a possibility. And also being okay if that answer never comes, and just moving away from the victim mentality because it's easy to stay stuck there. Give yourself time, have patience with yourself, give yourself unlimited grace. I think, especially as survivors, sometimes we're very tough on ourselves because we're sort of comparing ourselves to a version that we were. before we experience something that we really had no control over. Kind of unfair to do that to yourself. Even the way I used to walk before, I would just be really critical. Oh God, like this is how I'm walking now, or I'm not working hard enough. And just like really just beating yourself up when you don't have to. Because it's not moving you towards where you want to go. It's not keeping that vision of the future in hand. It's kind of moving you away from it and keeping you stuck where you are. And just encourage people around you to also give you grace as well, especially when you're in healing because it's messy. It gets messy, it gets confusing, and oftentimes I do look at it as like a spiral upward. You sort of keep repeating some of the same things until you get it, whether it's the anger piece you keep coming to this moment where you're having this breakdown and you're angry and you're upset. But one minute you're good, and the next minute you still are struggling in this one area because you have to release that. Help yourself also by really digging deep and thinking about the things that give you joy and practice doing those things, even if you don't want to, because it's going to generate some momentum within you to learn how to pull yourself out, and especially if nobody's around. If you feel like you're one of those people who don't have a support system, you don't have anybody that gets it, they don't understand, they're not compassionate, well, then you really have to dig deep and think about the things that make you smile. Because in those moments, that's all you're going to have. If you love to sing, sing. If you love to write, write. If you love to dance, put on some music and dance. As silly as it may feel, it's going to keep you alive. It's going to keep you moving forward. It's going to keep you healing until maybe you can get to the support group, or maybe you can get connected to the people, the resources, and things that are going to help you accelerate your healing. And lastly, pray. Everybody has a different upbringing and different experiences of what they believe God is, but I do believe there is a God. And I do believe that if you ask questions, it'll be answered.